having fun yet?
Being completely honest and transparent, I don't have a segue for this. I don't have a segue for this. I actually want to just read through this and then give you my thoughts, and we'll have a discussion over this overall, because yeah, I definitely have some thoughts. So this is something that's kind of going around about Eason, and it says Eason is not impressing during the interview or film sessions of his meetings with teams. There's a growing sense that his lack of feel is indicative of a fairly low basketball IQ. So how do I feel about this? I think it's hogwash. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's silly. And not so much the fact that this is just a complete lie, because just playing devil's advocate really quickly, let's just say that, hey, maybe it is the possibility of them just wanting to hurt his draft stock so he can land to them. Okay, that's always a possibility. That happens all the time. But let's just say that this is genuine. Okay, you say these thoughts are genuine. I think this is a very bad way of viewing this prospect. Now, with that being said, I am going to say this. I've been a huge advocate of huge basketball IQs. I love my guys with big basketball IQs. Even going into this draft, I would prefer guys with high IQs only because they will be the most NBA ready from day one. And it's a pretty good assurance that you won't have a bust, or at least your percentages are pretty decent, especially when you get into late first round, second round picks. You want guys with high IQs that can bring something to the game of basketball other than talent, because most of the talent is going to be swept up earlier in the draft. But that's besides the point, okay? If the talent is so much better than another guy with high IQ, you always pick the talent no matter what. Now, the reason why I find this very silly is because I want to start here. So Eason has said, and he's been very open, he said it a few times now, that he compares himself and has modeled his game after Kawhi Leonard. And you definitely see it when you see him play. Now, he's already talked to the Wizards, Spurs, Grizzlies, Cavs, and Rockets. One thing you don't want to do, and the reason why I brought up this Kawhi Leonard comparison, is one thing you don't want to do is base whether or not you pick a player off of bad interviews. I think that that's so silly. That's so dumb, because even if we're going back, okay, if we're just talking about really bad decisions, really bad draft decisions, apparently in Phoenix, the general manager, Lance Banks, or Blanks, this is what he said, or this is the reason why they didn't pick Leonard. The reason why they didn't pick Leonard is because he was acting nervous during his combine interview and he sweated through his suit. Now, another thing about Kawhi as well is he doesn't have a huge basketball IQ offensively. And I will say this, your boy Eason has basketball IQ, especially defensively. Basketball IQ offensively can be learned, but one thing that can't be learned is his frame, his athleticism, and some of his instincts. So I think that that's kind of ridiculous. But going back to this whole thing of picking a player based on an interview, that's so asinine to me. It's so silly, because at the end of the day, you can't necessarily bank on whether or not how well you get along with them, whether or not they'll be a great player or not. That's so dumb. You're not interviewing for, a communications the communications department at a business. They're not interviewing to be the speaker of the house. This is stupid. This is stupid. You don't do that. These are NBA players. These are basketball players. And yes, it's important to have basketball IQ, but at the same time, you can't base that off of an interview. That's just dumb. That's just really dumb. Another example that I want to give is this one in particular. So the Golden State Warriors, and we kind of already know this, but the Golden State Warriors, I mean, the reason why they chose Wiseman was an interview. It was literally an interview. It was basically them going out to dinner with him. He said, I don't do parties. And then, this is really silly. Meyer said, I wonder how I would perform as a 19-year-old with a bunch of 40, 50, 60-year-olds at dinner. And they just loved him so much. They loved him so much that they picked him based on the interview. You do not do that. You do not base it solely on an interview. That is so dumb. And one thing I want to bring up, because obviously I am a Spurs fan, so I got to talk about this. Sometimes Spurs fans say, you want a guy that's a Spurs-type player. And I always wonder, what is that? What is a Spurs-type player? What is a Spurs player? And I sit back and I think about it, and you know what? A Spurs player is really just someone who's willing to be coached and someone who works hard. It has little to no nothing to do with your personality. There's so many players on our team right now that have different personalities. I don't think that the Spurs are necessarily worried about that. Just if you're willing to be coached and if you work hard, if you're willing to absorb anything that the coach is giving you, the coaching staff is giving you, and you're willing to learn from that. That's it. There is no a robot that the San Antonio Spurs are creating. It's just that when you are humble and you're willing to sit back and listen to your coach, you're gonna sometimes have certain personality traits that are more reserved, and I think that's where people get the Spurs players. But you're looking at the outside and you're not looking at the inside here. It really comes down to those tenets. As long as you're willing to listen, as long as you work hard, you can be a Spurs-type player. It's just that those players that are willing to be coached, oftentimes they have personalities that would merit that. But that's besides the point. I'm just throwing that out there. But I did want to just talk about this because this whole Eason situation, I think it's dumb. I think it's very silly to say, well, he doesn't have high IQ, therefore he can't be a good player or something. No, that's not necessarily true. I love my high IQ guys, but if his offensive IQ is lacking, similar to how Kawhi Leonard's IQ initially lacked, he'll be perfectly fine. It doesn't really matter that much. So I just wanted to throw that out there because he is so talented, and I don't think anybody should skip out on getting him based on an interview or how well he does. I think that's just so silly. But anyways, you guys let me know what you think in the comments. You want to support the channel, only $2 a month. Patreon and YouTube members, link in the description. Thanks for the love. Until next time.